Hello everyone, welcome back to the kitchen table. Today on the kitchen table, I'm joined by a special guest. I believe you may be the first person to be live on the kitchen table.
Wow.
So I'm joined by Barris. This is Barry Clack.
Hello.
Professional photographer of many years, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Barry is here today to help me understand a bit more about what I can actually do with the camera on my Phantom, in this case the Pro, but it should work for any kind of automatic drone-based camera. What can I do to tweak the settings and go a bit into that scary manual part of the menu to maybe make things a little bit better than the automatics can do, especially in tricky conditions? So you're going to educate me.
Well, tell you about them. I don't want to educate you. You probably know far more than I do.
No. Well, not about that bit. Possibly about this bit, but not about that bit. But before we go any further, of course, it is the kitchen table. We always have a beverage when discussing drones. Now, it's early in the morning and we're both very civilised, so we're on the coffee. So
cheers.
Cheers, and cheers to you. It's my home-roasted monsoon Malabar. You'll drink it as a latte.
I'm having it as a latte.
Which is a rare treat for me because I don't do cow juice. So.
Very nice.
Let's move this away. So, Barry, let's talk a bit about you. Professional photographer, about 30 years in the business?
Oh, not quite. 1998. So coming up to nearly
but I think
20. But
you've been strapping a camera on.
Absolutely, since I was 14. So it's you get to that stage in life where you just think, I'm going to do this for a living. I can't be bothered to work for other people and earn money every month. Let's not earn any money, but do what I love.
Cool. And you've done a range of stuff, everything from your traditional sort of portrait and commercial and stuff all the way through to photojournalism, press shots.
We're I don't think it's a secret that we're in Oxfordshire, and Oxfordshire is just a fantastic place to get so much varied content. It's just wonderful. You have the Oxford Union, and so I've been lucky enough to photograph Barry White, Michael Jackson, Charlton Heston, everything. It's fantastic. Nancy Cartwright, who loved it. You know, cool. It's just we're really privileged to be living here and being able to fly here as well.
Yeah, and if you look on the odd newspaper's website, you might see a photo credit by
maybe
by one or two,
maybe
one or two by you. So the reason that Barry's here is he is going to help me, as I said, to understand a bit more about the ins and outs of some of the camera controls that we can adjust rather than letting the automatics. And he's done some footage for us, which we're going to play through and going to talk you through, just to illustrate some of the problems that you can encounter and how you can play around with the settings, don't be frightened of them, and maybe get a better result than the automatic.
Yeah, I think this is the most important thing as well, is just because you think, oh, well, I don't know if that looks good or that looks good, just keep trying. Don't be scared, because you may tinker about and it all may go disastrously wrong and you think, this is not good. However, if you keep tinkering, you'll realise what that setting does and what that does. I mean, those Phantoms are great for exposing stuff. If you just stick it up in the air, they will do the best job they can at trying to find a good image. Unfortunately, things like snow, water, or that orange thing that's outside up in the sky, it does confuse it sometimes. So take it out of automatic, have a go, tinker around, and you never know, you might actually produce something quite nice.
And actually what you did the other day was a classic problem kind of scene where it was been raining, the sun's just come out, you've got some really interesting cloudscapes, but you're going into sun and shade, there's bright parts of the image, dark parts of the image. So let's have a look what you did, and you can sort of talk us through what we're seeing and what you've done.
Well, it was a rainy day. You made the trip over to Whitney, which is where I came from, and we were supposed to go flying, but unfortunately rain stopped play. But in the afternoon there was a window of about 30 minutes. And as you can see, everything is set to automatic. It's very dark when you look at the grass on the ground, and then obviously the Phantom catches up, realises the scene has changed, and so it's changing exposure values to go from a very dark sea of grass to green grass. Then of course, as you tilt the gimbal back up, it sees this wonderful, wonderful bright sky with clouds in, and we lose the grass again. That's what we're going to try and get rid of by changing some of the settings. So there's a number of things you can change. It's best to stick with one item first of all. So if you choose what would be film speed, the ISO, have a mess around with that first of all. That works if you have a dark scene. So if you're flying and it's a very dull day and you want to try and squeeze a bit more light out, have a play with the ISO. Shutter speed, again, because you don't know what the whole thing is doing. You don't know what the light is going to be like. It's best to stick, like I say, with one thing. So go for the ISO. If that doesn't work, stick that back on automatic and then have a go at the shutter speed. And you will very quickly realise, and you'll look out the window and go, oh, it's a bright day, higher shutter speed. It's a dull day, lower shutter speed.
Okay, so what's the first thing that we're going to look at?
Let's change our white balance. Let's change our colour temperature, if you will. The Phantom has this great feature called log, which is basically a very neutral setting. Stick it over to that, and instead of trying to compensate for things, the Phantom will just record what it sees in front of it.
Okay.
So log gives you a more neutral colour. You'll see when it flicks over in the video that it just takes an image, and rather than give you the average of things, it will record what it sees in front of you. So you get more definition on the ground, but it also means you burn out some of the clouds, so the whiter clouds become more white. However, it means that in post-production, you get an image which you can manipulate more than if, say, you had really bright clouds and you try and tug them down a bit. Okay,
so that's log colour. What other things can we take out of automatic to improve things?
Kelvin. You can change your colour temperature. The Phantom comes with presets, sunny, cloudy, lots of different things on there. Now it's a cloudy day, so I set mine to cloudy, and as you can see, the definition then got even better just by telling it it's a cloudy day, so please don't overcompensate.
You can actually, that's quite noticeable in the tops of those kind of cauliflowery tops of the clouds.
Yeah.
that drop has suddenly made those seem, I don't know, it's more dramatic to me, doesn't it? Without you could see the detail rather than it all just being a sort of more white blob.
Yeah.
Cool. All right then. What's next?
Okay, so you saw I had a go at log, I had a go at colour temperature. Now the thing is in complete manual. I've got control of every aspect of it. So one of the first things you have a go at is shutter speed. Now obviously it was quite a bright day in certain parts, but cloudy. So shutter speed, I didn't really have that much of a chance to experiment too much, because the faster shutter speed, it means that you get a slightly artificial look. The faster the shutter speed is, more images being recorded.
Okay. So what do you recommend then on for this sort of day then? Where would we go?
Well, it defaults to around 100. That's a good starting point. The brighter the day, then you can get more shutter from it. The darker the day, as you can see, the more shutter speed you give it on a fairly bright day, it turns it into winter.
Yeah, whiteout. That's not the look we were looking for. Although I suppose if you wanted to sow Oxfordshire in the depths of winter in early September, you might want to use that.
Yeah,
but it's not a great image.
But the thing is, what it's learning you is that you've got so much definition on the floor. When it does white out, you've got all the definition on the floor that you couldn't see when it does an average valuation, but you can't see the clouds. And then as you pull it back down again, you can see that you're beginning to get the image back that you want.
Yes, so now to me the foreground, the fields, the definition in the hedgerows, even that little van that we saw whiz past and stuff, that's all now looking pretty reasonable. But the sky is
well, it's what do you want? What do you want from this? Do you want a GV? Do you want a general view of the whole thing? Are you recording the information that's on the ground, or do you want beautiful clouds? And this is how you would set the Phantom up to what you want to record. There's no point trying to set it up on a day like this, which was horrendous light-wise because it was changing. So what was I up there for? Well, this obviously was just a demonstration for the kitchen table. But if I were flying and I wanted the fields, I would take less definition from the clouds and concentrate more on the colour balance and the exposure of the fields, because that's what, in theory, the client would be after.
Sure. Okay, so I think I'm getting there. What's this strange voodoo thing called EV?
EV, exposure value.
No.
Exposure value is a fantastic tool, really fine-tuning. It's your fine-tuning gain, that's what it is. So once you've got your image sorted, you can then tweak it even more by changing the value. And as you can see, it changes rather rapidly from how much light is coming in. And it compensates for what it can see. Now, with a day with a changing light scene that we have, setting the EV value is a waste of time really, because it changes virtually every minute. But if you're directing a nice scene and the weather isn't changing, the clouds aren't flying over at speed, it's all nice and still, you can actually get some rather good exposures just by compensating the EV value. In the video we've just seen, I've gone from 1.7 to 7 to 0. So not a huge gap, but I believe the Phantom does 12 steps. But even those few short little gaps of just those jumps, it can change what it looks like massively.
Yes, and we're now getting, you could see that we're now getting that definition in the foreground. We've still got, the clouds are not quite as crisp, but it gives us a better overall picture, doesn't it? And you've just tilted down, and we haven't then lost, the camera isn't trying to compensate now. We've kept that same. So particularly useful for video, I guess, where you might be having a slightly moving shot. You can lock those in so you don't get these sudden changes from a low shot to a high.
It just means that you haven't got this change of scene that the Phantom is trying to get the best of all the time. Yes, that grass was underexposed massively. You couldn't really see it was green, but there wasn't a slide, an electronic slide of exposure going from a sea of black to green again.
Right. Okay, that's really interesting, and I think that's also perhaps that you need to think about, but it depending as well whether you're going for stills or for video.
Very much so.
You'll need to think about any changes especially with a moving shot.
Yeah.
And so I guess what you're trying to get, correct me if I'm wrong, I may not have got it, but what you're trying to get is basically a good average that won't keep chopping and changing, that we then take into our editing software and can do things to make it even better, rather than trying to get the absolute final result in the camera.
Very much so. Fire up your Phantom and look at the exposures. If you really are nervous about changing things, just take still images. We've got this wonderful feature where we can do video or still on the Phantom. Stick it in still and leave it. Still photographs are more forgiving than video. Video obviously changes as you go along. However, a still picture will take a picture at that second and that's it. So your exposure value may be perfect. With video, you could do 10 seconds, and during that 10 seconds, it might change so much. The end of those 10 seconds might be completely unusable.
Okay, sure. Now there's some other sort of functions that you can put in that are apparently designed to help, but just confuse me when I look at what are these wiggly line things.
Would you think, other than at the Cotswold Wildlife Park in Oxfordshire, we had zebras? Of course we do. Every Phantom comes with them. They're amazing. They're a secret locked away part of the Phantom where we have loads of zebras. They, of course, what they are for is to tell us what is being overexposed. They're very common in cameras, but still cameras do such a good job with exposure, general users don't find them. They come on every domestic camera as well as every pro camera, and they basically give you a warning to say this part of the image is very, very exposed. You might want to make a setting change to turn it down. It's just like an early warning. It's like the first petrol light that comes on your car. It's flashing away. You've not run out of petrol, but it's probably best to have a look at something and get it sorted.
Is this something that I think on some other people say? Is this the histogram?
Yep, absolutely. It's like a digital awareness of what's going on.
And I guess particularly if you're outside trying to look at these things through a tablet screen in bright sunlight, actually using that as a guide about exposure is probably going to be a lot easier than trying to look at the screen, which is not going to quite give you that, is it? Because we've all been outside with our tablet screens. They're
very
not
much
ideal.
Yeah.
So using that can actually help you maybe get closer than you would be able to do by eye. Interesting.
I jokingly saw somebody saying that they were threatening to take their 32-inch TV out and attach it to their Phantom so they could see. The more you see when you're recording, the better your image is going to be. It's as simple as that. And even now, going from a tablet of 8 inches, which is what I use for my Phantom, to a 15-inch screen, I can see imperfections on there. So the zebras only help. These things are only there to help us. They're not there to hinder.
Brilliant. That has been, thank you, because that's really helped, and I think the demonstrations are great. It's really helped me understand what I can tweak and how it will affect. And I think, as you say, it's digital. We're not taking up film stock, so let's use loads of it and have a practice. And I think what we're next going to do is we're going to do a part 2 of this, where we're then going to look at, okay, you've done your best to get a nice balanced shot in camera. What are some simple edits we can do in post-production that most edit software will be able to do? Nothing too fancy, just some basic changes to give us an even better result.
I think we all want the best we can from the shots that we shoot, but don't try and emulate Jurassic World from a Phantom, because that has been through so many processes to make all the white balance and make it look nice. But you can do some very simple tweaks to make it go from a nice bit of footage that looks good to something that looks a little bit better.
Brilliant. Well, I look forward to that, and we're gonna sort that out in hopefully the next few days. I'm going to go to Barry's kitchen table, and because he's got a slightly swishier computer than me, and it'd be a lot easier to show you what he's doing on his gear. But for now, Barry, thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on the kitchen table, and I hope you guys at home found that as interesting and useful as I did, as someone who isn't, as you'll know if you're a subscriber, somebody who is very much self-professed, not a photography geek. That was just a really nice, for me, explanation of what some of these can do, and I think we'll hopefully encourage more people to go and do some manual tweaks. So thanks very much for joining us on the kitchen table, and until next time, cheers!